Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I am Tracy Triggs-Matthews with the Ackerman Center for Excellence in Sustainability at Kenan-Flagler Business School. And our center has been involved with the Cleantech Summit from its start in 2014, when folks at the Institute for the Environment and our center, people from the clean tech business community, government officials, and nonprofits all came together for a day of discussion of this growing space and what it means for North Carolina. Steve Wall reminded me yesterday that at that event, then Chancellor Carol Holt announced that this is an important topic, and next year we will host a 2-day event. And I'm pleased to say that we rose to that challenge and continue to bring students and academia, professionals and government officials together to discuss the challenges and opportunities in the clean tech space. Today, I'm honored and pleased to introduce our keynote, Henry McKoy, the inaugural director of the Office of State and Community Energy Programs. I met Henry in 2008 and know him as a person who answers the call. Whether it's meeting with students, startups who have questions, banks or industry leaders wanting insights into financing or government support, or our request to come and speak here today, Henry is always willing to have that conversation. Henry has an undergraduate degree from Kenan-Flagler Business School, a master's in science from Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment, and a PhD from UNC Chapel Hill's Department of City and Regional Planning. His experience is vast and spans entrepreneurship, banking, local, state, federal government, teaching, and advising. In his current role with the Office of the Undersecretary for Infrastructure and the Department of Energy, Dr. McKoy manages the Office of State and Community Energy Programs, leading a team that's charged with investing $16 billion federal dollars annually into strategic national energy projects at the state, local, and community levels, focused on building and strengthening physical infrastructure, reducing climate change, creating well-paying jobs, and driving social and environmental justice across the United States of America. I am glad Henry took the call for that role, and I know we will all benefit from his leadership. So please join me in welcoming Henry McKoy back home to North Carolina and UNC Chapel Hill.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that kind introduction, Tracy. So happy to be here. So happy to see everybody. It's a funny thing, as you read my my bio. So as you mentioned, I'm a Tar Heel. I'm a double Tar Heel, right? So undergrad here, and my PhD. My wife graduated from UNC Chapel Hill. I have 2 kids. My daughter graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2021. I have a son who's a senior now. He's about to graduate from UNC Chapel Hill in a couple of months, right? So I got that Duke thing in there, and I'm gonna tell you a story, really quick story. Usually when, and I'm gonna tell you it's a true story. Usually when somebody tells you it's a true story, you got to watch because but this is actually a true story. So, my son who's about to graduate now, when my daughter and him were real young, probably in I guess elementary school at the time. Hey Jeff, you hanging out? Jeff's supposed to be in class somewhere teaching, but so when my kids were little, man, my wife used to kind of split the duty. We'd take them, my wife would take my daughter to Girl Scouts and those kind of things. I'd take my son to football practice, and so like on Thursday nights we would kind of fend for ourselves in terms of eating. So my son at the time was probably about 7 years old, and we went to football practice. And at this point in time, I was getting my master's at Duke, right? And keep in mind, we raised our family for the most part to hate Duke, right? I mean, I'm just that's kind of how we. But I always tell people, but Duke was really doing some really, really cool things. And so I would say I would preach hate Duke at home and kind of sneak over and work with them. So one evening coming from football practice, we stopped by Bojangles to get something to eat, right? My son, who's about this tall now, was about this tall at that time. So we're standing in line and we're moving through, and you kind of reading off the menu. So I open my wallet to pull out my debit card to pay. My son, who again is right around this point, he sees my Duke ID inside my wallet. So he looks at the Duke ID, he reaches over and pulls it out. He looks at the Duke ID and he looks at me, he says, what is this? And so now I'm like a deer here. I don't know what to say, because what am I gonna say? So I just snatched my ID back and put it in my wallet. I won't even look at them, right? And I'm looking at the menu, kind of move down. And so we get down to the end, and you're waiting on your food, and he just looks up at me, he says, I'm disappointed in you. And and I said, why? He said, you know why. And so it's funny. We got in the car, we rode home, and it was dead silence. Didn't say a word to each other. We get to the house, and my wife is there at my daughter. So I go in the bedroom and I close the door, and I said, Jalen found out that I go to Duke, right? She just bust out laughing, right? So she said, I'm gonna run out. I said, no, don't go say anything. He may grow up and forget, right? So, but I want to say I hope I don't disappoint any of y'all today as I kind of go through this talk. So I'm very happy to be here and see so many kind of good old friends from I saw Rita last night hanging out at the top of the hill, and Angela. I see Jean out here, and so good to see everybody. I won't take up a ton of your time, but I'm so happy to have gotten invited here, and so thanks so much for the invitation. This is an incredible summit. It brings together so many smart and wonderful people doing this important work. And I want to say, on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration and behalf of the U.S. Department of Energy and my Secretary Granholm, thank you so much for the work that you all are doing in this clean energy space. Also, again, wants to thank UNC Chapel Hill for this invitation, and Tracy for that wonderful introduction. As Tracy said, we go way back. And then Jeff Middlestad. Jeff and I was looking last night. Jeff, who of course is the executive director of the Ackerman Center for Excellence and Sustainability. I met Jeff when he was getting his MBA, and so we've known each other for almost 20 years now. So it is really good to be back home. Of course, Kenan-Flagler and the business school is my alma mater, so it's always great to be here. So I don't take this opportunity to speak here lightly, because I know you could have got almost anyone you wanted to speak here. It's a wonderful, beautiful day in Chapel Hill. It's nice and beautiful outside. You could be out looking at dogwoods or whatever you want to do. And I know you've been in all kind of sessions over these last several days, and so I want to be very cognizant of your time and the value of your time. And so I hope I can say something here today that perhaps is of value to you. We're getting to the end of this summit. Is right after lunch, so I know I probably have to try to figure out how to keep you all awake. You got that nice salmon and the soy balls or whatever that was. I know that's on you now. So I'm gonna try to again keep you awake and hopefully add some value to this work. I do want to thank, before I go a little bit further, my chief of staff, Chris Castro, who won a Trailblazer and a Pioneer Award here yesterday. And Chris is actually he's saving me again. I couldn't be here yesterday. I had to be elsewhere, but as happens in Washington D.C., we got a call that we need to get in front of the Senate committee and defend our budget. And so Chris is off in a room someplace here in the corner doing that, so I can stand up here and have this conversation. And so it is a wonderful thing to have great team members as part of your staff. So as some of you know, my big boss, the president, is in town. He's right across the way. He's actually speaking at Wolfspeed today, which is a semiconductor factory. If you didn't know he was in town, if you try to leave out of here in the next couple of hours or so, you may find out he's in town. I didn't learn this until during the Obama administration. I went to an Obama event, and I was trying to get to New Orleans, and I remember leaving an event and the highway was shut down. At that moment in time, I realized just how powerful the presidency is. The whole highway gets shut down, like in both ways, and nobody can get on. And the time for my flight came in and went. I'm like, man, I got to get to New Orleans. But guess what? They shut down the airspace too. So by the time I got to the airport, my plane was still there waiting for me. So hopefully none of you all will have to deal with that. He's on President Biden's on the Invest in America and Energy tour. He's talking about the investments in the chips and Science Act that have been invested, and he's speaking about right around 2:30 today. But I want to mention that because my being here and the president being not too far away from here is, I think, an embodiment of the importance of this work that everyone is doing around energy. Wolfspeed makes semiconductors, and they do a lot of work in electric vehicles and renewable energy and the transition to energy storage. But they also, with the $5 billion investment that they're looking at making in this space, they've also decided to partner with Stokely Black College, North Carolina A&T, around some of that energy work as far as in addition to the workforce. This is, I think, an important way that we think about this opportunity to really do and create new partnerships and different partnerships that will have bigger and bigger impacts as we go forward. So in a lot of ways, I think hopefully that can set the tone for what I want to talk to you all about today in terms of, what we are here together collectively in this moment of time and what that opportunity is. In some ways, this feels like a capstone of sorts, and I say that in some ways it feels like a graduation. I don't know, maybe it's because it is that time of year. As I mentioned, I mentioned Chris Castro, my chief of staff. He was, again, here holding down the fort yesterday. And so, he was talking about the Friday Center, and he was right across the street at the Marriott. I was like, well, I feel like Chris needs to see more of Chapel Hill than just the Friday Center and the Marriott, right? So I decided to pick him up yesterday evening and take him out to dinner. And so we went down to Franklin Street, and on the way to Franklin Street, I took him to all the sites, right? We went to the Bell Tower, and I talked about that. We went by Kenan Stadium and the Dean Dome. Took them by the old well, and let them jump out and take a picture with the old well and all the good things. And out there you had students that were in their cap and gown and getting ready for graduation and taking pictures. And so I guess I'm just in that graduation spirit. And I feel like that in a lot of ways we're at this moment in time where we are graduating from so much work that was done over the years to push to get this kind of historic legislation passed. There's never been time in history where so much money, so many resources have been put forth to address the sustainability crisis, the energy crisis, the climate crisis. And I think that that's so important that we take this moment in time and actually recognize that. And in many ways, I feel like that this summit is like a commencement or graduation, right? Because I know all of you all over the years have been working so hard in this space. I've known a lot of you all over the years. I mean, and it hadn't always been easy. And so I think that it is important to recognize that we are at a time where we've seen the largest investment in clean energy that the country's ever seen. My organization, the Office of State and Community Energy Program, which is one of the newest organizations within the Department of Energy and within the federal government, we have $16 billion that we are responsible for investing. But that's just kind of a tip of the iceberg. Across DOE writ large, we have about $100 billion that are dedicated to making investments in clean energy and climate. And then across the federal government as a whole, we have a bit over $500 billion, $500 billion, all dedicated to this space of clean energy. And we get a chance to wake up every day and do that work. And I want to really try to leave you today with an understanding of what this moment in time means and what this opportunity is. I think this is a bit of a culmination. I know over the last several days, I know there were conversations about green finance. There's been conversations about roadblocks to clean energy transition, repowering the earth, emerging technologies and energy innovation. All those kind of things are the things that will make this moment in time important in the long span. But all those things need to be paid for, right? Somebody's got to put resources in those. So that's partly what I'm here for. I always tell people, I've been a banker over the course of my, I was a banker, I've been the Assistant Secretary of Commerce and other things. I noticed that my jokes always get better when I have money. And people always find me more pleasant to be around. And so I don't take any I don't take any offense to that, right? So keep smiling and shaking my hand, but I'm certainly here to talk about how do we finance this work. And so when Jeff asked me what I want the title of this talk to be, I knew exactly what I wanted to call it. I wanted to call it Financing the Climate Future Government Style. or I break it down a little more simple. This is my more common way of referencing my work every day is everything, everywhere, all at once. That's essentially what it feels like doing this work, because there's so many resources following the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's investing in everything, everywhere, all at once. There's so many resources that it can be mind-boggling. There's times I go out into the community and I sit on panels and I talk about, the number of programs we have and the dollars and resources, and I leave kind of feeling bad. I'm like, man, I just kind of threw all this stuff on folks, and I know their heads spin because my head is spinning. But it's important to recognize that there is really something for everybody. SCEP, as I mentioned, is what we call the Office of State and Community Programs. Is one of the newest offices in DOE. I started this role in July 2022. SCEP came about as a result of the November 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law, the $1 trillion. A few months later, the White House created something focused on infrastructure and climate. Right after that came the Department of Energy's infrastructure and climate, and so my team was a part of that. I started this job at the end of July 2022. I had $6 billion as part of my portfolio. 3 weeks later, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, and I had $16 billion as part of my portfolio. And I slightly tell people that we are, we have to balance this idea. We are a startup. We're just a startup with a lot of money. And so, which is not a bad thing to be. I mean, if I got to be a startup with a lot of money and startup without, I guess I take the one with money. But we're having to do all these kind of things that any other startup would have to do. We have to stand up the organization. We have to think about the mission and the critical work. We have to hire people. But while we're doing that at the same time, we have to deploy this capital all across the United States and sometimes across the world. And so if you think about the resource we have, so I have about 30 programs alone in my shop. We have weatherization assistance program. We have about $3.5 billion. We have something called readiness funds, which helps to get homes that are in disrepair that need weatherization. We get them ready for weatherization. We have about 25 million in that. We have something around enhancement and innovation, tens of millions of dollars. We have a state energy program. My team funds all the 50 states, 5 territories, and Washington, D.C. with funds on an annual basis to invest in clean energy projects. That's over 800 million. We have something called Community Energy Program, which is $1.2 billion, where we fund everything from schools. We have $500 million. We have something called the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, where we fund 2,700 communities around the country with $550 million. We have schools and nonprofits. The nonprofits, we have $50 million. We have a workforce development program. We're at $260 million. We have something called Local Government Energy Program that's a new program, $22 million. We have something called Energy Futures Grants, which is focused on technology and clean tech, $50 million. And kind of the big kahuna, we have the Inflation Reduction Act rebates, $8.8 billion. And that's just kind of a few of the programs. So it is everything, everywhere, all at once. The $100 billion that I talked about across DOE, where my sister offices, we have everything from grid deployment, the clean energy demonstration, technology transfer, loan production office, virtual power plants, manufacturing. There's a huge component of this work focused around Buy American. And so there's a tremendous amount of dollars that are focused on how do we build out the supply chain in the United States. Battery manufacturing has grown by leaps and bounds over the last year or so. The $500 billion that we have across the federal government includes everyone, all the alphabets you can think of, right? HUD and EPA and USDA and DOT. So all of that together really is what we have to bring to this fight, this real fight. We have rebates, we have tax credits, we have formula funds, competitive funds, grants, loans, everything, everywhere, all at once. But that's really what's needed to address this problem that we're facing. It's what is needed to take this work as far as it can go. And there is a lot further that we can go. So I think we've all come together at such a critical, important time at this moment in time, and we have this opportunity to make history. I know many of you have been working hard on this area of clean energy and technology for so many years that, again, this is a culmination in so many ways. The Biden-Harris administration thanks you for that. The American people and the citizens of the world thank you for that. And again, I thank you for that. You've had the passion and commitment and the intellect to really get us this far. The $500 billion that we have across this administration is really to say to everyone that we're open for business. But we know that's still not enough. It's going to take trillions and trillions of dollars to move this work forward. So our $500 billion is really a lot like a down payment. We have to activate these dollars that are out there. We talk a lot about braiding resources and leveraging resources to really move this work forward. And so the $500 billion is really dropping a bucket. But you know what? We have to do this. It's imperative that we do this. We have no choice. And we have to do it in a very equitable way, a way that's much more equitable than kind of the original built environment. So that's why I'm here to have that conversation with you today and talk about where you fit into that puzzle. So I believe a good commencement speech should have at least 3 things in them, right? You should have advice, you should have a lesson, you should have a charge. So I attempt to leave you with each of those things. So I'll start with this word of advice. Graduations are a time of reflection and celebration. I've been reminded many times over the last 15 months just how much work went into getting these legislations passed that create these historic amounts of resources, and the committed and passionate people that have worked together to get here. It's not just been politicians or administrators, it's been professionals like you all, it's been activists, it's been others. So this is a result of great ambition, hard charging focus, and people wanting the best for the world. And I think that deserves a moment of reflection, a pat on the back, a moment of self-satisfaction. But we can't do that for long. Passing legislation is one thing, implementing it is something else. So my advice is to give each other high fives as you leave this conference, pat each other on the back, exhale for a moment, but don't do it too long because there's still much work to be done. We as the administration can't do this work without you. We have billions of dollars that need to get to work, and we need to deploy it. And so we need to deploy it in projects. We need to deploy it in wonderful ideas. We need to deploy it in many ways as we can to see what works. We need boots on the ground. My office was set up just for that, to be the boots on the ground. Historically, Department of Energy has been 80 to 90% research. We have 17 national labs all across the country that come up with fancy ideas about floating wind and geothermal and things of that nature, but somehow you have to figure out how does that go into community. And so really, that's what this moment in time is about, deploying resources in communities. But we can't move so fast that we leave whole populations and people behind. We know that for years, whole groups of people in the United States and around the world have really borne the brunt of climate and energy injustice. They've borne the cost of energy burdens, the environmental pollutions and waste. At least once a month, I get invited to a city by community members who take me on what are called toxic tours. These toxic tours put me on a bus and they take me around and show me all the places that waste and other things have been dumped on those communities. They talk to me about the high rates of asthma of the kids. They talk to me about the death rates of the adults and individuals. They talk to me about the same hopes and dreams that they have, but why they're being stunted by their kind of place in this food chain. So my advice is let's move fast, but let's move fast with purpose. So now I gave a bit of advice. Let me take you on, let's talk about a little bit about a lesson. So for those who've known me for a long time, know that I'm a former track runner. I ran track here at UNC Chapel Hill. So about 30 years ago and about 40 pounds ago, I was a runner. My event was 400 meters. And so that's one lap around the track. The 400 meters is an interesting race because it requires both speed and stamina. You can't go out too fast or you'll break down before you get to the end. You can't go out too slow or people will leave you and you'll never catch up. So you have to figure out both, strength and strategy in the race. And you know when you get on that home stretch that it's going to hurt. So the 400 meter runner, you realize that no matter how tired you are at the end of the meet, there's still that last race, which is the 4x400 meter race, right? And you have to be a part of that. And so a lot of times that 4x4 was what stood between a team championship and not. And so as I think about that analogy, I think about this journey of equitable decarbonization that we're on, that we're in the midst of a race. I talk to my team every day about this final race that's coming up, being a part of the 4x4. It's a relay. Meaning we're going to take this baton from folks who've been doing this work for so long, and we're going to at some point give it off to someone. We're going to hand it off. But as part of that, I want to tell you I have something I call my 4x4. And my 4x4 is, I talked to my team about a framework that we must do our work through. The first four of that 4x4 is what I call core, door, more, and soar. Core really focuses on this idea of what are the fundamental things that must be done in order to make this decarbonization and this clean economy work. So what are the things that are fundamental to moving this train forward? The door piece means that we must be open for everyone to enter into this door. We must create a front door where every community can be a part of this. There's no way we reach these enormous goals and aspirations without everyone being a part of it. And you have to remember, I tell my team, a door works both ways, right? It's not just about someone coming up to you. We have to go out that door and meet communities where they are. More means, how do we make sure that we're not working in silos, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, that we're working across our different sister offices within my shop, as well as across DOE, as well as across federal government as a whole. So more is about really bringing more folks to the table, more partners, more people that can work with you closely. And then soar. I think we should all strive to soar at some time, right? How do we come up with big, hairy, audacious goals that help to move communities forward? And every community wants to be a part of something greater than themselves. So that's the first four of my 4x4, core, door, more, and soar. The second part of the 4x4 is something I call warmth, workforce, wealth, and wisdom. So the work that we do crosses the gamut. When we do weatherization, which is essentially putting resources to create energy efficiency in low-income households, we are creating warmth. We're creating warmth, in the winter when it's too cold, making homes warmer. In the summer when it's too hot, we're making homes cooler. But it must go beyond that. It can't just be going into a community and saying, we're going to make your house more energy efficient. How do we connect these communities to opportunities and jobs through workforce? And I think about workforce is not just always about offering someone a job. It's also about offering an opportunity for ownership and entrepreneurship. And so workforce is a key part of that. And then wealth. I tell the secretary all the time, we can't just go to one side of town and again, tout the weatherization that we're doing and go to the other side of town and open up $1 billion factory and create wealth. Everyone wants the opportunity to be a part of this American dream, to be a part of the opportunity to be a part of open mobility. And so everyone should have an opportunity to have that. So we have to think about that overall. And I always say that for all the resources we have, and as a former banker, I tell you, this is maybe a secret to some of you all, but as a former banker, you can spend a lot of money and put a lot of money out there and still not really achieve a whole lot. In this case, we have a lot of money, and it's absolutely possible to put a lot of money out and not achieve the goals that we want to achieve. But I'm committed that we're not going to do that. We're going to have something to leave behind when this is all said and done. We're going to have opportunities that will continue to deliver to communities long after I'm out of this chair and long after the president's out of that chair, and that's my commitment. So we have warmth, workforce, wealth, and the last W is wisdom. Wisdom means that we have to be smarter. Every dollar we put out, we have to be smarter with the next dollar. We have to learn from what we do. We have to learn from our investments. We have to learn from the communities that we're investing in. And so I always push my team that we have to be wiser and smarter every time we make a deployment of capital. So the 4x4s, core, door, more, and soar, warmth, workforce, wealth, and wisdom. The lesson really here is to stay in the race and be ready for the race. But don't forget the fundamentals. Don't forget the community. Don't forget having the right partners. And really don't forget that imagination oftentimes is greater than knowledge, as Einstein told us. And don't forget that we have to run as a team. So I've given you some advice. I've given you a lesson. That brings me to this last and final point. The charge. I don't have to explain to you all what a green economy is. I mean, you all have helped build it. You're helping to build it. You're part of the builders and you understand the precision of things. But building out this just and equitable future must begin now to take on a whole new level of work. You must also realize that the work that we do is both art and science. I want to come to you today and talk about more than just statistics and programs. And I can send you to a website to learn about the Department of Energy. I want you to walk away with more than that. In DOE, we have $250 billion loan fund run by my colleague Jigger. We have a $16 billion, the $20 billion grid deployment office run by my colleague Maria. I have the $16 billion with hundreds of millions of dollars all around. DOT, the Indian Affairs. There's so many resources out here. Department of Commerce. I encourage you all to figure out where you fit into that. Who has the resources that will support your work that help move you forward. I encourage you all to look at the local government. The billions of dollars is going to the local government. The billions of dollars going to state. The billions of dollars going to the tribal nations, and figure out where do you fit into this. I want you to think about and learn about what we call Justice 40. And Justice 40 focuses on the notion that 40% of the benefits from these programs should accrue to historically disadvantaged communities, and figure out how do you work in that space as well. And we will be your investors. We will invest with you. We will invest in your ideas. We will invest in your projects. But we want to do it to create an equitable world, which, as I stated before, is both art and science. And I encourage you all to think about how do you build out a pioneer and trailblazing career for yourself in equitable energy. So as I wrap up, I want you to think about this. Think about, as I think about my background in business and the private sector, something kind of resonates in my mind. How many of you all can name 3 businesses that were founded 400 years ago? Or 500 years ago? 600 years ago? Anybody? Now, how many of you can name an artist whose work goes that far back? How about Michelangelo, who lived from 1475 to 1564? Created the Statue of David. What about Leonardo da Vinci, who lived from 1452 to 1519 and created the Mona Lisa? Or Rembrandt, who lived from 1606 to 1669 and created the Night Watch? It is said that Michelangelo made the statement, "I know the creator will go, but his work survives. That is why, to escape death, I attempt to bind my soul to my work." As director of the Office of State and Community Programs at the U.S. Department of Energy, I get the rare privilege of waking up every morning with the opportunity to help people. We invest in all of this incredible infrastructure that's needed to keep our economy going. Housing, water and sewer, small business, solar, schools, nonprofits. So many of the things that you can see, touch, and even feel. There's no feeling like it. And we get to make those investments all across the United States and even the world. And we get to do it with diverse partners and allies like you. Riding by a structure that you built or invested in, which was created because of something you did, is an incredible feeling. And I tell my team all the time to be proud of what you do every day. And borrowing from Michelangelo, I tell them to bind their souls to this work. That though none of us can mortally live forever, nor remain in the same job forever, we can find immortality through our work. I encourage you to do the same. We should all strive to be artists, engineers, and dreamers, because artists, engineers, and dreamers change the world. I talked a few minutes ago about this desire for everyone to be a part of this notion of the American dream that we used to hear about so much more. In 1931, James Truslow Adams coined this phrase, the American dream, which was described as the dream of a land in which life should be better and fuller and richer for every man, a dream of social order in which each man and woman shall be able to attain the fullest stature of which they are innately capable of. Nearly 100 years later, I ask you, what are you innately capable of? Throughout much of our American and global history has been the artists and the dreamers that have helped lift society up. Many of their creations still exist today. Here we are now in the need of more artists and dreamers. Most importantly, we need you to center your work around human-centered equity by design. So much of our past has been and had aspects of inequity by design. It's time to change all of that. But none of us can do that alone. So that's my charge for you in this early afternoon at the beginning of spring in 2023. It is time for a season of change. So as you leave these hallowed walls today and go out into the world, leaving Chapel Hill and returning to wherever you came, remember these sentiments, even if you cannot remember these words. Your art can make the world better. Your science can make the world better. Your engineering can make the world better. Your business can make the world better. Your dreaming can make the world better. They can all elevate the human spirit just as it has throughout human history. Michelangelo said, "In every block of marble, I see a statue as plain as though it stood before me, shaped and perfect in attitude and action. I have only to hew away the rough walls that imprison the lovely apparition to reveal it to the other's eyes as mine see it." Figure out what your art is. Figure out what your science is. Figure out what your engineering is. Figure out what you are innately capable of. Figure out your contribution to the future and to creating a more equitable and greener world. This moment in time is not the ending. This is the beginning. Make the next century the equitable century. Make it a UNC climate century. Pull people into your art, your science, your engineering. Captivate them the same way that your favorite song captivates you. Like the one you turn up on the radio when you're in the car, when you hear it, so you can hear it even louder. Or the movie you just can't turn away from, even though you've seen it 1,000 times on television. Or the building you can't just stop staring at because it's so beautiful. So remember what I said to you here this afternoon in Chapel Hill. Take a breath, pat yourself on the back and smell the roses, but not for too long because the world awaits you. Amo sagno credo. Those are Italian words for love, dream, and believe. Love this world that you live in. Dream about making it better and believe that you can. And finally, I charge you to be the pioneers and trailblazers of the equitable world. Find your piece of the marble and see the beauty that lies within. Find your corner of your building or your neighborhood and transform it. Work hard to bring that beauty out and show it to the world. Create your own immortality. There are many lost Einsteins out there who can help lead us to an equitable and decarbonized world. They're waiting for their chance. Young people waiting for their homes to be warmed, waiting for the opportunity that you can present them, waiting for their shot. They're in rural Americas, they're in urban America, north, south, east, and west. They're all around. To reach them, to impact them, to transform their lives, it's critical that the public sector makes the right investments now and in the future. Not just at this moment, not just for this time, but ongoing. It's critical that these be deep investments, broad investments, and most of all, equitable investments. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. We need your partnership. Why? Because we need to be everything, everywhere, all at once. You hold me accountable to that, and I will hold you to the same. Thank you all, and safe travels. We don't have much time, but I guess we can take a couple of questions if anybody have any questions. We have a couple of microphones up here.
Very inspiring. And thank you for giving us that, because I needed it after that IPCC report. I'm curious how we can make this DOE money more available to people who maybe not that great at grant writing and more equitable. We talk about more just and equitable, but I help a lot of startups, and I find that the ones that are least likely to get funded are the ones who probably need it the most. Mm-hmm. And the government seems really intimidating to them.
Well, great question about the intimidating nature. I was telling somewhere earlier that, so particularly with now all these provisions with the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, we get these templates for funding opportunities from the White House. And they show up in my inbox, they're like 130 pages, and that's before anybody else has put anything in it, right? And that can be pretty intimidating. We're trying to, as I said, trying to meet communities where they are. And so one of the things that we're doing across DOE writ large is implementing more what we call prizes. And prizes are a simpler way to a simpler hurdle really to come out the resources and money. A prize is more like we may ask you to submit a 3-minute video or something, right? Tell us about your project. We might ask you to submit a 5-page concept paper. Those kind of things that really try to bring the bar down a bit. We also are creating more programs that do take into account some of the historical legacy and the challenges of communities and small businesses and things of that nature that carve out resources essentially to help move them forward. And so we are taking that very seriously in terms of how do we essentially create a more equitable opportunity for the communities to get access to resources. Because as you said, it's generally the ones that need it most that have the biggest challenge of getting. So thank you. Guess we good. All right. Well, thank y'all.